How are we doing, everybody? I hope everything is going well. Jordan, how are you today?
Steamy Wednesday here. It's like 100
very,
degrees.
Yes, it is too hot. Too hot.
Yeah, it is blazing hot here in Wisconsin. I know there was a hurricane-earthquake combo earlier this week, and a hurricane.
A hurricane, if you will. How are we doing, everybody? I hope everything
out in California, so anyway, hope everyone's staying safe.
Let me just pop out the chat here. All right. I will preference this episode today, guys, by saying one thing. If you're watching us on YouTube right now, you might see we're missing Adam. And two, we're doing it a little early, as Joey says in the chat. I can get down with that. My kids are awake downstairs, so if you hear them, my apologies. I will just say that. We're live every Wednesday or Thursday. We're going to be live going forward either Tuesday or Wednesday for the season starting here soon.
Because we got those Thursday games. Yeah.
Oh, man. They're yelling down there. Sorry.
It's okay. We can't hear them.
All right. Well, I'm just going to keep it going. Yeah, we're live right now on YouTube, youtube.com/Next Step Fantasy Football Podcast. Check out our Instagram at Next Step Pod. Just making myself bigger here. Yeah, let's just get into it. I will say the overlay is a little messed up today, and it's only things I notice, I think, for people. Like, other people don't notice. It's just, when we have only two people, it affects how big we are, so I have to redo it every time. It's just a pain in the butt.
That's all right.
96 in Florida feels like 106. We got you beat. It was 98 here in Wisconsin, and it felt like 110 at one point today.
My real temperature was 101 at some point.
Yeah. Global warming is a myth. All right. Jordan, why don't you hit it? Oh, Jordan, before you hit it, just so you know, now you guys can see behind the scenes, I listened to the last episode. You're a little quiet. So when we're
a little quiet. All right.
I don't know if we'll do that later or now, but... Yeah. Just letting you know.
How's this? Am I better now?
Just beautiful. Just gorgeous.
Love that. All right,
hit it.
Here we go.
Welcome back to the Next Step Fantasy Football Podcast. We're here to help you take the next step in your fantasy journey. My name is Jake. I do not have to be quiet because my kids are awake. And I am joined by my friend Jordan. Jordan, how we doing?
I'm doing great. Wow. All right.
This is like brand new. I don't got to be quiet right now.
You don't have to whisper? Yeah.
We're doing this live on YouTube right now, youtube.com/The Next Step Fantasy Football Podcast. We're doing it at 6 p.m. on a Wednesday, a little earlier. Unfortunately, we are not joined by the coach, Adam. He's working, man. The
season began.
Yeah, the season began. It didn't go the way they were hoping to start, so he's putting in some extra hours this week trying to get the boys ready. So,
yep.
Gotta appreciate the grind, right?
Oh yeah, he puts in the work.
He puts in the work. Yes, we did our home draft this past weekend. Highlight of your home draft, Jordan. Tell the people about a story. What happened to you? So right. Let me preface. We do a dynasty league, so it's mainly rookies. There are a few vets in there too, but tell the people what happened.
Yeah, my team just royally collapsed last season, and so I ended up with the second overall pick. So I took Anthony Richardson. Love that for me. And then in the second round, I was like, who am I going to take? In my rankings, I had A-Chain, the running back in Miami. So I drafted him only to find out that day, like 10 minutes prior, he got injured and carted off the field. And that's why you stay up on the news even while you're drafting.
That's right.
Because it was a really bad look for me.
It was funny. It was good stuff. Looks like he's only going to be week to week, though. So I think he dodged a bullet there.
Yep.
We don't really have a game today because, it's not as fun when it's just you and me. So, my wife says in the chat, give a shout out to Oliver. He's watching. That's my son, Oliver. Hello, Jordan. Say hello.
Hello.
See,
thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, you start teaching the kids early, right? You get them really into football now so that that way, when our home league, when we get too old, we can just hand it off to our children, right?
Hand it off. Perfect. Yeah.
So why don't we go ahead? We'll get into the news, and then we'll unveil our wide receiver rankings. Jordan, is there a window open near you, or anything like that?
No.
Yeah. Okay. You just keep getting really bright, and then going back to normal, and then really bright. I don't know. You know that too if you're watching on YouTube. You got YouTube right now at youtube.com/the Next Step Fantasy Football Podcast. That's beautiful. If you're listening later, thank you. You guys are awesome. We're about to hit 400 people on Facebook, so you guys are awesome. Great. Love that. Why don't we get the news? Jordan, you got it?
Yeah, but are you going to give me an intro?
I can try to. It's not the same, though. But I guess I can be a little loud this time.
No. Here's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
I'm going to go take a clip from Adam saying it last episode, and I'm going to put it right in.
Ooh, a little post-editing. So,
yeah, look out.
So, hold on. Right about now, you're going to hear it if you're listening to it later.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Adam, for the introduction, as always. All right, we actually have a lot of fun news. A lot of fun news this week. It's kind of been wild. So, Jonathan Taylor was granted permission to seek a trade from the Colts. So, if you remember, long saga of Jonathan Taylor, we kind of talk about it every week, excused absences, all that kind of stuff. Colts reportedly are looking for a first rounder.
They're not getting
to make that deal happen, or equivalent, I should say. 6 teams have inquired. 2 of them are actively engaged in offers to the Colts. So to me, that's actually a more surprising. That's a surprising number because it's not just the trade. They also are going to have to get some type of long-term deal done.
Yeah.
I don't know who those teams are right now.
I know Miami. We know Miami's one of them.
Yep. Gotta be.
That's the big one. And that would be the most ideal spot, right?
I think so. I'd like to see him go to the NFC. Like, what's the NFC doing?
I think Chicago is an interesting one. I know I talked about Khalil Herbert, but putting Justin Fields and giving him Jonathan Taylor would be a really good one.
Yeah.
I also, the Kansas City, the same people who are in on these other running backs, it's possible, right?
Cook, Zeke,
the Bucks would be interesting. I don't think that's going to happen, but it'll be Tuesday deadline. So, depending on when you're reading or listening to this, before next episode, we'll know what's going to happen with Jonathan Taylor.
So the Tuesday deadline is when they have to trim their rosters down to the 53-man limit. So that's why Tuesday is the day, right? Some other news. Let's talk about who's getting starter jobs. Baker Mayfield named Buck starter. I don't think that's surprising.
Not shocking.
Not shocking. Still, I don't think you draft him in a redraft league, but could be interesting. Sam Howell also officially named the starter. I feel like last week I said that, and it turns out that wasn't official news, and then they officially announced it this past week, so good for Sam Howell. You know I'm in on Sam Howell. He's a sleeper this year.
That's true. So is Tony Pollard.
Sam Darnold wins the backup job officially for 2023.
Trey Lance must be just such a boob.
He's just got to be terrible.
I don't understand. Adam last week said I'd trade him for a 5th-round pick and get out from under it. I'm all about that.
Yeah, and then there's like some cap implications too. Like getting him traded, it's like $5 million of dead money. If you cut him, it's like $15 million. So there is incentive. There is incentive to trade him for even if it's a small price.
Send him to Minnesota. It's the perfect spot.
Yeah,
you want to get out from Kirk Cousins, you'd have the ability later on, right?
And then Brandon Allen is just like the journeyman veteran backup who's probably going to get the 3rd spot because you want like a veteran presence in that locker room. So anyway, crazy saga there with Trey Lance. We'll just keep reporting. No real fantasy implications. It's the Brock Purdy show. Josh Jacobs is expected to report back to the Raiders before week 1.
So knowing he's going to come back, how do you feel about an early 2nd-round pick on him?
I feel like I want him to actually come back first, but that's still the spot for him when he comes back.
Yeah, I like it. What you're doing is he's gonna come back, and week 1 might not be what you want, but give it 2 weeks and it's gonna be fine. He's gonna have a great year. Just checking the chat quick, Jordan. Joey's in here. He says Taylor to Minnesota. I think that would be a good one. I don't think they would though, considering they just saved a whole bunch of money on Cook and then.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that'd be fun. Younger. Mayfield start 4 weeks. They have their week 5 bye, and then Trask starts. I mean, the thing is you don't start Trask and then go to Baker, right? You start the veteran and then go to Trask. So I think that is certainly possible. Keep it going.
Yeah, this is Baker's last shot. If he can't make it work, he will be forever a backup.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And I don't mind him as a backup.
No. I think he's fine back.
Yeah.
Also, back on the Josh Jacobs thing, the Raiders apparently have no interest in trading him, which was talk previously. So I think he will be a Raider for week 1. Speaking of holdouts, Chris Jones, for the defensive lineman for the Chiefs, has said reportedly he is willing to hold out until week 8, which would be kind of wild. Not really fantasy relevant.
He's losing $1.1 million every game he misses.
Yeah. So,
yeah, but I gotta say, when you got the money already,
I think they'll get the deal done before the start of the
year. They better.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
In my head, they're just probably ironing out the details of it right now, like guaranteed money and length of contract and stuff.
Yep.
Zeke reportedly seeing an uptick in passing game work. So he's already the goal line guy, and he's going to see some passing game work. That really stinks for my boy Ramondre Stevenson. So reports out of New England camp is, unfortunately, it's going to look like every other Patriots offense with running backs that ever happened, which is you can never tell who the guys are.
You're going to get some J.J. Taylor games.
yeah, exactly. And last news before I get to injury stuff, Corey Davis retires from the NFL.
I loved Corey Davis coming out. I think you knew that. Like, I really hyped him up. Didn't work out. Retiring at 28. The guy's made a bunch of money. Clearly buried on the depth chart. I always wonder if there's situations where maybe there's, like, family, right, that's living in New York. Or, like, that sort of stuff where you're just like, I don't want to upend my family. If you don't have the passion to do this anymore, why upend the family, right?
I mean, for millions and millions of dollars, but...
Well, I mean, when you already have millions and millions of dollars.
Yeah. But did you watch Hard Knocks, Jake?
I did not. Episode? I haven't watched this newest episode.
Okay, so there's a clip in the newest episode of Hard Knocks, and it's Randall Cobb talking to the receivers, and he says, if Aaron Rodgers doesn't trust you, he's not going to throw you the ball.
Corey Davis is like, all right, bye.
And then Corey Davis retires. That's weird timing. So obviously, likely unrelated, but interesting to hear that the conversation about trust and things like that, because that was what plagued the Packers last year.
Yeah,
with Aaron Rodgers, is just no trust to receivers, and he kept throwing it to Randall Cobb and Al Lazard when he had two young guys that just were bodies on the field that he never even looked at.
For sure.
So that's it for some of that news. Getting into some injury stuff, because there's been some notable injuries. Jackson Smith-Njigba for the Seahawks broke his wrist, a bone in his wrist. So he had surgery on that. He's likely facing like a 3 to 4 week timeline. Originally they said maybe back for week 1. Now it doesn't look like it. Yep. So he might miss a week or two.
Still more of a dynasty guy.
More of a dynasty guy. Yeah.
Right now.
Yep. Other injury news, Miles Sanders expect to be fully healthy week 1. That was when we were monitoring, so just wanted to close the loop there.
Okay.
Should be ready to go. Russell Gage, wide receiver for the Bucks, season-ending knee injury. Bummer. So I still think Mike Evans and Chris Godwin are the ones. No way Baker Mayfield was going to support a third.
No. We're not sure he can support 2. So
correct. We talked about Devon Achane, who's considered week to week with the shoulder injury, so no lower body injury, just a shoulder.
They're carting everybody off nowadays.
They are. Speaking of carting people off, Cole Kmet carted off in practice. Injury is unclear, but he was walking under his own power. So
they're just like, we don't need you to walk. It's fine.
Yeah.
Oh, you hurt your hand. It's like in Madden, when in the older Maddens, I don't know if they fixed it yet, but they'll be like, he'll be holding his arm and running off the field, and then the little thing will pop up and it'll be like, broken kneecap. And you're like...
so some injury things to keep an eye out on. They carted off Achane too, and it's a shoulder. So
great. Glad he's okay.
And that's the news.
All right. Jordan with the news is what he's going to put there at the end.
No, I only do it at the beginning.
Oh, okay. Well, now you can... going forward, we don't need Adam to say it. We can just stop, and then you can just splice it in.
We'll see how editing goes. I don't want to.
Okay, we'll see. All right, let's unveil these wide receiver rankings. If you are watching us on YouTube right now, you can see them. We got our top 20 up. We're gonna kind of go through them, kind of tell you guys why kind of we're thinking the way we're thinking. I thought that making these rankings, I thought there are a lot of good receivers in the NFL. That was my thought. There's a lot of good things or receivers. So we're going to go through 1 through 20. We'll post this on our Facebook and our Instagram as well, so you can kind of see it. after the episode goes live on the podcast site, so you can follow along if that's easier, or just kick back and listen. Jordan, you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
All right, let's start with number 1. Justin Jefferson. I think this is the easiest of all of them. I know... Listen, Justin Jefferson is good. I have him as the 1-1 this year, especially in any sort of half-point PPR or PPR. He just eats, man. There's a guy who can go for 2,000. It's him. I know Tyreek Hill talked about how he wants to, but he's just such a monster. Take him at the 1-1. If CMC goes at the 1-1, take him at the 1-2. You know, some people might try to get cute and try to tell you why Hill should go or Chase should go or something like that, but it's Justin Jefferson. Take him. Take J Jets and slot him in and then forget about it for the next 4 months.
Correct. Yep.
Nothing to add. Just, yep. I mean, that's what it is.
1,800 yards, 8 touchdowns. He'll probably have more. No Adam Thielen in Minnesota means potentially some more touchdowns. Because Adam Thielen was kind of the touchdown guy.
He was, yep.
In Minnesota. So
number 2, we got Jamar Chase. So for me, you know, Jamar Chase or Cooper Kupp, I think that's kind of for us here on the podcast who you want there. If you prefer Cooper Kupp at the second receiver, then great. For me, you know I love Cooper Kupp. You know it. The difference for me was one guy has Joe Burrow and the other one doesn't. That was my thinking. Because they each dealt with injury last year. I think, you know, Jamar Chase is on the better offense right now. So that's kind of why my tiebreaker. Because I think they'll both finish right around the same thing.
Yeah, I think you're right. Joe Burrow is the X factor there. Jamar Chase missed a couple of games last year, assuming he has a fully healthy season. He's so electric.
Mm-hmm.
And so is Cooper Kupp.
Yep.
But Cooper Kupp's a year older.
Yeah, you just, you know, when you have two guys that you rank so similar, you have to nitpick, right? Oh, I prefer the younger guy who has had less injuries over his career, right? Because, you know, the older you are, the more wear and tear you have. So that's the break, like the what's the word I'm looking for? The difference between the two, right?
Yep.
I think all 3 of them are fantastic. I think all 3 of them deserve to be in the top 3. For me, it's the top 4, and that's moving on to Tyreek Hill. And the reason he is, why don't you actually? I've been talking more. Why don't you tell us why would Tyreek Hill be at 4 for you?
He's, to me, there's kind of now like the next tier, right? So there's still 1A, 1B. You call what you want. So there's the first round guys, and then there's kind of like the tail end of the first round guys here, which is Tyreek Hill, AJ Brown, Stephon Diggs in my mind, right? Like those are the next 3 if we're putting them in tiers. I like Tyreek Hill the most because him as an individual, it's just so he can get you those yards after the catch. Just, I mean, it's unreal. Like just watching him, you know, take a screen pass for an 80-yard touchdown. It's just unfair. Also, he says he's committed to the 2,000 yards, which
he better hope he has Tua. I think that's another thing, you know.
Yep.
When you're comparing Cooper Kupp, Jamar Chase, Tyreek Hill, what are the difference? What's the problem? Jamar Chase had 1 injury last year. That's like all his negatives, right? Then you go to Cooper Kupp, you know, he has the hamstring, and Matthew Stafford's not the best anymore, right? And then you go to Tyreek Hill, and he's connected to his quarterback. If Tua's not playing, he showed last year that he can still produce. He did not produce as well, right? As well, in quotations, because, I mean, he still put up wide receiver 1 numbers. But, I mean, do you want Mike White? What happens if Tua hits his head week 1? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's tough.
Then you have Mike White the rest of the year? Don't love that.
I still think he's a 1,000-yard receiver.
Oh, he could be a 1,500-yard receiver.
But I think 1,500 yards is realistic with 10 touchdowns for Tyreek Hill. You know, last year I'm looking at stats now, it was 1,700 yards, 7 touchdowns. But I think he's 1,500 yards no matter who's throwing him the ball. Or excuse me, like 1,200 yards no matter who's throwing him the ball. If it's Tua, it's 15 to 17. You know, 1750. And then he would have an awesome year to get to.
All 4 deserve to be in the first round.
Yeah.
The top 4. Justin Jefferson for me is clearly number 1.
Agreed.
But if you take Tyreek Hill as wide receiver 2 in your draft, and that's who you want, fine. I'm not gonna argue too much against it.
Those are the first round guys.
Yep, checking. All right, checking the chats. There's a lot of people talking about stuff we'll talk about later here, so I'll mark it. And then Joey says, I think Chase has the most volatility of the top 3. He can finish 1 or 21. What do you think of that?
I don't think that's true. He only played 12 games last year, and he still finished as wide receiver 12.
Yeah,
so
I agree. And then give me Mike White over Tua. More deep ball shots for Tyreek and Waddle. You're nuts.
Joey, that's a bad take.
Yeah,
man.
I know that Joey has talked about how much he dislikes Tua, but let's be honest. This isn't a Fitzmagic situation. Yeah. So then number 5, we both went AJ Brown. Did you have Brown at 5 as well?
I had him at 4, actually.
Oh, okay, there you go. So we've talked about AJ Brown endlessly. We talked about him before last season, how excited we were about him. And then we were right, which always feels good. Him and Jalen Hurts are electric. I think he's a step down just because, I don't know, why do you think he's a step down between these guys?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I should clarify. I actually had him at 6, you had him at 5.
Okay.
So the tiebreaker,
yeah.
But very much right in there. He's a step down from that. I think volume, he's definitely competing for targets, and Jalen Hurts is not we love Jalen Hurts from a fantasy perspective because of the rushing upside. He's not the prolific passer that Joe Burrow is, right? Because I would say Jamar Chase also competes with a very, very good number 2, which is T. Higgins, and we'll get to that. A.J. Brown competes with a very, very good number 2, which is Devontae Smith. We'll also talk about him in these rankings. Just Joe Burrow feels like he can support that way better than Jalen Hurts can. If Jalen Hurts takes that next step in passing, you're talking 100 receptions for A.J. Brown would put him in the top 5. He only had 88 last year, and he was at the wide receiver 4. Yeah. I think he just has that big playability. But he is a step down, just, I think, the quarterback.
Yeah, I think it's worth saying that, when you have a mobile quarterback, there are more times throughout a game where there'll be designed runs or, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Cooper Kupp, Tyreek Hill really don't have mobile quarterbacks. So you don't have to worry about that ever happening. They're always passing the ball on 3rd and 8. So it's just a minor step down. Just barely. I think it's right in this tier with the next guy as well, which is Stephon Diggs. A guy who's been doing it forever. He was ranked in the top 5 for receivers last year during draft time. Is it the same sort of situation for you? Or because Josh Allen has a better passer of the football than Jalen Hurts right now?
I think so. I also think some of the drama coming out of
it kind of sours. It sours us to him a little.
Yeah, and barely when we're talking about he finished as wide receiver 5 last year. We're saying he's wide receiver 6, so barely. But that's if I'm between AJ Brown and Stephon Diggs, which I was. That's kind of the deal breaker, and it is again in that tier of elite wide receiver, but the quarterback who's throwing to you has some of that short yardage, designed run, that thing.
Yeah.
So,
but again, an elite receiver. He's a wide receiver 1. Feel good about it, and he'll have weeks where he has the wide receiver 1, the best receiver of the week.
Totally.
So then we go ahead and we went CeeDee Lamb at number 7. I think this is a big year for him. I think that again, wide receiver 1 numbers. I think having Brandon Cooks there is a good thing. I've talked about how much I like Brandon Cooks this year. We don't have him in our top 20, but I think he could finish in the top 20, Brandon Cooks.
Of course you do.
Of course I do. You know I do.
Classic.
You know I do. And everything out of camp is showing that he is really... We're not talking about Brandon Cooks, but I think he's going to have a really good year. I think having...
You could have put him in your top 20 and you didn't, Jake, so...
Okay. I think... He's 21. I think having a good receiver on the outside is going to help open up CeeDee Lamb as well. I think we could see a really big jump where he's in the top 5 for receivers next year. I think this is the year we would see it. It's really what you think of Dak as well. And I've talked about how I'm pretty high on Dak. Where did you have CeeDee Lamb in yours? Do you remember?
Right here. I had him at 7.
Yeah,
I think we both had him at 7.
I had him at 8 behind the next guy. But wide receiver 1, again, I think it's connected to Dak. If Dak's struggling this year, it's going to be a hard time for him.
Yeah, but I mean, CD played all games last year, but Dak didn't,
Yeah.
and CD still finished as wide receiver 6.
So we're picking him. We're picking
It's
him
the same.
We're putting him right around where he finished last year. For me, I'm not batting an eye if you take Brown, Diggs, Lamb, and the next guy we're going to talk about, Devontae Adams, in any order of those 4. I don't want AJ Brown to be last in that, right? But I think that's the next tier. That's tier 2.
That's
those
second round,
4 guys.
Second round picks.
And they all
second
should
round.
go in the 4th round.
The second round.
Thank you. The 2nd round. Thank you.
Yeah, I was like, well, not the 4th.
Well, if you find them in your 4th round, snag them all. Trade picks,
Also
get
take
to
that.
those
Yeah.
spots.
Yeah.
All right.
I'll talk about the next guy,
Yeah, go
Devontae
ahead.
Adams. Because the reason that he's at 8 in our rankings is because I put him at 9, and Jake had him much higher.
I had him at 7, so right in the middle.
Yeah, I love Devontae Adams. The talent is awesome. I've talked about it before. Stats do not lie. Hard to have those after age 30, 1,500 yard, 10-plus touchdown years. It's even harder to do it when Jimmy Garoppolo is throwing you the football.
Top 20. I think I booked that, right?
Jimmy Garoppolo?
Yeah.
You did.
Yeah.
Terrible
Okay.
booking. You did say if he plays the whole year, though, which is like the
Give me a little
craziest thing
caveat.
ever.
A
Yeah,
caveat
which is
just
the
to get
craziest
out.
thing. Because he will definitely not play the whole year. But that's my concern, and that's why he's lower in my rankings. The talent is awesome. I love Devontae Adams. It just feels like what the Raiders are doing is they're not clicking well. There's just some weirdness with, obviously, Josh Jacobs. I have my reservations very strongly about Jimmy Garoppolo, and I think he takes a step back this year, not of his own doing, and I think it's a frustrating year for people who own Devontae Adams.
Yeah.
Because you'll have to start him every single week. You
Yep.
will have him, and you will have to start him every single week, and it will be frustrating because he's not going to give you what you want.
I mean, you're still, even in your rankings, you still have him as a wide receiver 1. I think his issue is that you're drafting him and you want the Packer, or even last year, Devontae Adams, right? The guy who could give you top 3 numbers, top wide receiver in the top 3, right? But I don't think you're going to get it. I think you're going to get, back end wide receiver 1 numbers. But you'll get good games. Again, he's another guy going in the 2nd round. I wish Adam was here because he has him higher than a lot of these other guys we were just talking about. And what he said was just it's based off talent. He's just that talented. I hear you. All these guys are talented, though, is my thought.
Yeah, it really is interesting. It's like interesting philosophy, right? Because I think Adam always leans towards it's all about the player's talent. Like talent will outshine everything, and I'm way more in the camp of their situation is so much. I take that into account so much.
Mm-hmm.
I guess Adam looks at coaching a lot, and that's not really
That's not our thing.
That's not really a thing I look at. But anyway, all together, we get all points of view.
I know. I wish we had him
Perfect.
right now. So number 9.
Adam, we miss you, buddy.
Yeah. Number 9, we got Amon-Ra St. Brown, and number 10, Garrett Wilson. So I had Wilson at 9, St. Brown at 10. I believe you had the opposite, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my thought with Wilson at 10 is he has Aaron Rodgers. He won offensive rookie of the year last year. I think he takes a giant step this year. It is also worth saying that I don't really like Allen Lazard. I made that clear last year, where I think I said he's not good or he's not great at anything. So I don't think he's a capable or very good wide receiver 2. So I'm not worried about that at all. So Wilson's going to see a heck of a lot of targets. So that's why I prefer Amon-Ra, over Amon-Ra. But on the flip side, Amon-Ra is going to see a whole bunch of targets too.
Yep. I just think Amon-Ra St. Brown finished in the top 10 last year.
Yeah.
Garrett Wilson finished as wide receiver 21,
Mm-hmm.
and he played the whole year. So what we're saying is having Aaron Rodgers swing you the ball puts you an entire tier up. You were the top wide receiver 3. Now you're going to be the bottom wide receiver 1, and I think that's awesome production. So this is definitely not a shot at Garrett Wilson at all. It is. He's going to take a huge leap forward. I just think Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to do the same thing he did last year, which you put him at wide receiver 9.
Mm-hmm. I get it. I mean, I think these are the top 10 wide receiver 1s in the league, and I feel really good about that. And I think some of these other guys, you'll get wide receiver 1 numbers periodically, but I think these are the consistent ones that you'll get.
Agreed. Yep. And I think we'll get to them here. 11 through 15, I would also say, I think most people would agree they kind of are, that's the spot for them. And then 16 through 20, the chat's blowing up right now.
Oh, yeah.
There's debate about 16 through 20.
I got some comments on number 16. Jordan, tell the people top 10.
All right, so we got Justin Jefferson at 1, Jamar Chase, Cooper Kupp, Tyreek Hill, A.J. Brown, round out the top 5. Then Stephon Diggs, CeeDee Lamb, Devontae Adams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Garrett Wilson at 10.
Love it. That's a good top 10, if I do say so myself. We are live on YouTube at youtube.com/NextStepFantasy Podcast. If you want to be part of the chat, which we keep kind of referencing, we're live typically Wednesdays or Thursdays. After next week, after next week, we'll be then either Tuesday or Wednesday. We'll lock that down more consistently coming up. We have a Facebook page at the Next Step Fantasy Football Podcast. Instagram, next_step_pod. So go check all that stuff out. It helps us. We're growing. We've talked about it before. A year and a half into this, didn't expect it to be as big as it is right now. So, anyone who's here right now or who listens later, we appreciate you. Enough of the business talk. Jordan, talk about number 11.
All right, at 11 we got Jalen Waddle. So now we've entered the next tier, which is elite number 2 options on teams, right? And there's a handful of them, right? These teams that have like 2 just awesome wide receivers on their team. So Jalen Waddle gets the first spot of this group. He finished as a top 10 receiver last year. He finished as wide receiver 7.
Do you think that has more to do with injury, though? Because he finished as wide receiver 7, but Cooper Kupp wasn't in the top 10. Jamar Chase wasn't in the top 10.
I think that's a good call.
Garrett Wilson wasn't in the top 10. Oh, never mind, not Garrett Wilson. But you see what I'm saying? Like,
yeah. I think he would have finished probably around here if all those guys stayed healthy.
10, 11, 12, somewhere in there.
12, 11, 12. Yeah, I think that's a good call out. I think in that regard, we're not even pushing him down that much from where he finished last year. He had a lot of touchdowns, 8 touchdowns, 1,300 yards, 75 receptions. I think something like that is his season again. And the reason that I love him and Tyreek Hill both so much is like they did it, and it didn't matter who was throwing them the ball.
Yeah.
You know, they had like Skylar Thompson throwing them the ball sometimes.
What a legend.
They were still getting great production. So obviously Tua staying healthy impacts this hugely, but I think they can still be like, if you drafted them and Tua was hurt, you would still be okay playing them every single week. Yeah. Whereas some of these other guys, you would be like, oh man.
Well, these guys are the high-end wide receiver too. If you drafted one of these top 10 guys and can get one of the next 5 guys we're talking about, feel really good about it because you're going to get wide receiver 1 numbers sometimes, and you will always get wide receiver 2 numbers every time, right?
Yeah.
And I think Jalen Waddle is the one who will give us the most wide receiver 1 numbers. I think that's kind of why we had him at 11. Moving on, then we got number 12. We went Chris Olave. So I had him down, I think 15, 16. So I wasn't as high on him. I know you had him right around here, and I know Adam also has him pretty high. Yeah. I just like for some of the guys we're talking about next more. Maybe that's more my feelings on Derek Carr. But why don't you
like him worse than Jameis Winston? I think Derek Carr is an improvement.
Over who? Jameis Winston?
Yes.
Was he their quarterback last year?
Yeah, right?
Oh my god, I am just having a... Yeah, I'm looking at the chat. They're talking about it right now.
What?
They're talking about it in the chat. Jameis Winston.
Now you're in my head.
I know. Oh my god. Taysom Hill played quarterback.
Yeah. No matter who was throwing him the ball last year, I like Derek Carr more. So
I think this is are you expecting a big jump? I guess is what I'm saying.
I think it's in touchdowns. When I was grinding the stats a little bit.
Stats.
And he had 1,000 yards receiving and only 4 touchdowns. And he finished as...
you double that and...
and he finished as wide receiver 23. So if you doubled that, just again looking at the numbers, and you kept the same receiving yards and receptions for him, that would have put him already at wide receiver like 15, above guys like this is last year, Terry McLaurin, Brandon Ayuk, and then could jump Tyler Lockett into the 12th spot or the 13th spot from last year. So I think more touchdowns is great, and I just look at like what Devontae Adams did last year with Derek Carr. 100 receptions, 1,500 yards, 14 touchdowns. Chris Olave is not Devontae Adams, but...
It was Andy Dalton for 14 weeks. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, Did
I
Jameson
forgot
play?
about it. Yeah, I had 3 games.
Okay.
I forgot about that.
Either way, I love Derek Carr more than that.
I do love Derek Carr more than that.
So that's why I'm higher on Chris Olave. He also is not competing, which we'll talk about Jalen Waddle, T. Higgins, DeVonta Smith.
You watch your mouth. What about put some respect on Michael Thomas's name? Flex appeal.
Sorry, Michael
Flex
Thomas.
appeal.
Yeah.
I understand. Yeah. And like I said, we're talking about some of these other guys, and it's more I've seen them do it, so I want to see them. I would like to see Olave do it first. So if I'm taking especially if you don't get one of these top 10 guys, like I want T. Higgins, who's next at 13, because I've seen it. Like this is your wide receiver 1 on your team. I need the consistency. I want Jalen Waddle. I'm not taking a risk. Like I want a guy we've seen produce. I want a safer guy here. So this is really talk about draft strategy, right? If you're waiting and these 11 through 20 guys are your first wide receivers, for me, I want the safeness over the upside, personally. So I'd prefer a T. Higgins at 13, a guy we've seen produce with Jamar Chase, and especially with Jamar Chase going down. Last year we saw Higgins really have wide receiver 1 numbers every week.
Yeah.
So I prefer that. I understand if you want the upside of Olave because he has such upside, right? We could be talking about him. We could be talking about him way higher, right?
Yeah.
I don't have the ADP in front of me, but I'd be curious to know who's going higher. I would assume Higgins is going higher. So you might still be able to get Olave later. But these two are really close for me. If I would redo my personal rankings, I'd probably put Olave up closer to Higgins here. So moving on, DeVonta Smith. You own DeVonta.
You didn't talk about T. Higgins.
I did. I just talked about him.
Okay.
He's had
Moving on.
great. Well, no, wide receiver numbers when Chase went down. We've had wide receiver numbers as well. We've seen Burrow be able to produce 2 really good receivers. So I think he's a safe pick as a wide receiver. Wide receiver 2 numbers most of the time. Can give really good wide receiver 1 numbers periodically though, and he's not going to disappear. That's my thought.
Yep.
So 14, DeVonta Smith. You own DeVonta Smith in a bunch of leagues. Tell me why you like him. Because I had him down to at I think 18 was my thing.
He finished wide receiver 10 last year.
Injuries.
To who?
I'm just saying. I'm saying to other receivers. Like he is not a top 10 for me.
Would agree. Not a top 10. He's 14. He's just I think exactly right. Cooper Kupp, Jamar Chase, all those guys are healthy. They jump him on this list. He gets pushed down. He has a similar season. 1,000 yards. 70 to 90 receptions, a handful of touchdowns, a 10 would be awesome. And that's just, that's an awesome season. And we saw it happen. We saw Jalen Hurts do it. I think he does something similar again. I think if one of them's going to take a big jump, it will be A.J. Brown, right? Who gets kind of the bump there because of the talent. But I like DeVonta Smith a lot. And as a 2, he's kind of like T. Higgins, for me. It's this, they're different types of receivers, but I like kind of the setup that those teams have.
Yeah, actually, and we're not going to end up doing an episode on tight ends. We're just kind of running out of time here before the season starts. But I think for me, he went down a few spots because they're getting Dallas Goedert back. He missed the majority of the year last year, and we've seen him also be a tight end one, a pretty good one at that. So there'll be less targets to go around, right? And I think that's just kind of why I bumped him down. I think we get these games from DeVonta Smith that are 130 yards and 2 touchdowns. We also get these games where they're 5 for 50. And that's just not my... I don't want that. I don't know. I feel... It's just, again, it's draft strategy, right? I love him if you ended up with Cooper Kupp as your wide receiver 1, right? He's a great wide receiver 2. I do not want DeVonta Smith as my wide receiver 1 on my team, though.
No. I don't know.
Which is interesting. Which is interesting though, because if you go running back heavy early, right? Joey threw something up here that said if you went Chubb at 110, Barkley at 2.3, and ended up with Olave at 3.1, I think he means, or 3.3, whatever, 3.10, whatever it is.
Yep.
That situation, I don't want DeVonta Smith as my wide receiver 1. I'm okay with DK, who's next. And I'm also okay with the next after him, which is Amari Cooper. Because, again, I want safeness with my first receiver, personally. If you took receiver early, I like the risk of Devontae Smith. More upside, right?
Yep.
So it's all for me. For me, it's 100% what draft strategy you're using, and you have to be fluid with that, right? If the guys aren't falling to start, then you need to switch it up, and you need to recognize that very early on. Even we're talking, these guys are in round 3, 4, so you need to know very quickly. Oh, I had to go running back heavy to start. What am I going to do with my wide receiver one? You got to be thinking 2 picks ahead.
Yeah, and it's Jalen Waddle, T. Higgins, Devontae Smith. Those 3, because they're the number 2 option on the team, puts them in that riskier category.
Yep.
Whereas like, DK, and we'll get to Amari Cooper and some of these other ones are just the number 1 target, and that makes them more desirable, or more safe, I should say. Not more desirable.
I agree.
Safer.
Let's talk about DK, and then we'll check the chat. DK Metcalf, monster. What a monster of a human being, right? I think he is a top 10 receiver in this league, right? Would you agree with me? We're talking just in general. He is a top 10.
If all quarterbacks were the same, he's
yes,
top 10.
And I don't like Geno. I think we talked about this earlier. I think it was fool's gold what he was able to do last year. Good for him. Like, make your money, fantastic. But imagine if you took Joe Burrow and gave him DK Metcalf. He'd be in the top 3. He would be right where Jamar Chase is.
Yes.
And he just has not had that in a few years now. Even his last year with Russ wasn't as good. But he's the wide receiver 1 on this team, and they're going to throw the ball. I don't hate it. Right?
Yeah, he finished as wide receiver 19 last year, but interesting to note, Tyler Lockett finished as wide receiver 13. And I think Tyler Lockett takes a step back. He's just another year older. He was old.
He's older. He's an older receiver.
He's an older receiver. I think he's in his mid-30s now. DK is like in his prime. And so I think that some of that target share ends up to DK.
Agreed.
And Tyler Lockett takes the step back, which is why I like him at 15. So we're really not saying that much more for him. But yeah, your hate for Geno is completely just disrespectful.
Sure.
But
yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah.
You're like, yeah, it is.
It probably is. I hope for him. I really do. Like, it's hard to believe a guy could go 6 years and be bad, and then all of a sudden just I'm really good. We saw Josh McCown do it once, too, and that didn't work out. Matt Flynn did it once, didn't work out, So I don't know.
They didn't string it together for a whole season.
That's true. That is very true. You're right. That's not a
whole season, and they gave him better weapons. They gave him a new running back, like to back up Ken Walker. They got him a new wide receiver. You're right. It might not be as good, but it's not fool's gold.
I hope I'm wrong. I'm hoping wrong. All right. So 11 through 15 is Jalen Waddle, Chris Olave, T. Higgins, Devontae Smith, DK Metcalf. Let's check the chat quick. Chad Booth jumped in and said hello. What's up, man? How's it going? One of the guys likes Olave over Wilson and Waddle, which, I mean, if that's your thing. He says, I think A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith are going to be fool's gold with the return of Goddard. So I believe that as well, but not to the extent he's saying. Right?
Fool's gold?
I think that Devontae Smith's not at... Yeah, fool's gold is the wrong word, right? I just think that Goddard returning is going to affect Devontae Smith. I don't think it affects A.J. Brown.
And I think at least I'm expecting a step forward for Jalen Hurts in his passing game that can accommodate for that.
So let's talk about 16. We got Amari Cooper. I think that he is... It's interesting that they're on the same team, but he reminds me of Nick Chubb in the fact that they're just consistent. He's a consistent wide receiver too. If you strike out on the first 15 of these guys and you're able to get him as your wide receiver 1, I'm okay with that because he's just consistent.
There's some disrespect in the chat about other guys that should be above Amari Cooper, and I'm sorry, guys.
Yeah,
Amari Cooper finished as wide receiver 8 last year with Jacoby Brissett and whatever Deshaun Watson is doing. Like, he is. I like the comp with Nick Chubb. It doesn't matter what the offense is. It doesn't matter.
He's a high end wide receiver. He's a high end wide receiver 2, a low end wide receiver 1 every single week, and he's never drafted like that. Yeah. So, like, I had him a lot higher. These are rankings that we averaged out between the three of us, and it's not where they're going to finish. It's just where we would have them, right? So, like, I don't have Brandon Cooks on here because I think he's, right now, wide receiver 20, between 20 and 25. But I think he could finish higher, right? So I think with Cooper, he could finish in, we saw it. He's a top 10. So he could do it again. I just think, realistically, I think that he is a wide receiver 2, and you love it. And I like the consistency. I've talked about that a million times this episode. I prefer consistency. And there are going to be people who prefer the opposite. And that is fine. And that's the fun of it, right? For example, you would probably take the next guy over Cooper, wouldn't you?
Sure would.
You
Calvin
sure
Ridley.
would.
Yeah. To me, this is the ultimate risk pick, right? Like these two are polar opposites on the spectrum.
And we would,
Amari
Jordan
Cooper,
and I would draft completely different here.
Yep. Amari Cooper is just safe and a little boring, to be honest, which is fine, right? Like, that you're going to get just a wide receiver 2 week in and week out. Calvin Ridley, the upside with Trevor Lawrence is like through the roof. We just haven't seen Calvin Ridley play. So to me, I look at this and I'm like, what great value. Because he could be a wide receiver 1.
Yeah, right? he was wide receiver 1 before he decided to gamble. Yes. So, and that was with an old Matt Ryan.
Yeah, so, and now he has Trevor Lawrence, who's going to get some MVP votes. I think I booked that.
You did, yeah.
So I'm pretty high on Calvin Ridley. I think it's a big swing, and I love it for where it is. Right, you're probably getting him in the 4th round. Just take the swing, see what happens. But if you don't have a wide receiver,
so let me ask you a question. Pretend you do not have a receiver. Would you take Calvin Ridley over Amari Cooper?
Yes.
Yes, you would. Would you do it over DK?
Yes.
Would you do it over Devonta Smith?
That's where if I didn't have someone else.
So would you do it over T. Higgins?
If I didn't have someone else, no.
Okay. So, all right. So he's taking over 3 of the guys we just talked about. Now, let me ask you this. Pretend you have one of those top 10 guys. You have Kupp, let's say. You take him over Cooper?
Yeah.
DK?
Yeah.
Smith?
Yep.
Higgins?
Probably.
Olave?
No.
Okay. So you push him up.
I push him up a handful
7 spots. Yeah,
my draft strategy, yeah.
So,
well, that's and would I take him over it like them? Maybe not, because that's bad value. Like early 3rd
just
round.
Pretending the value is good.
But the value is good. I like the risk is worth it. The upside is worth it for Calvin Ridley this year.
Okay, great. Speaking of upside, DJ Moore goes to Chicago. We Jordan and I have talked about how much we like DJ Moore. We believe he is a wide receiver 1 in this league. We believe he can be a top 10 receiver in this league. If he finishes top 10 this year, I will not be shocked. I will say that. I think very much tied to Justin Fields and his passing ability this year. He's ranked at 18 because I think that's where he belongs right now. I think that, he could finish higher. I don't know if he will, right? I just don't know. And that's the scariness part of it. I'm taking DJ Moore. I think I had him. I have it here on my phone, but I think I had him higher than Ridley, right? Yeah. So, and that's more of my thoughts on Fields, because if you guys go back 2 episodes and re-listen to the quarterback episode, I had him at quarterback 3, I think. So I had him very high. And so I'm expecting this offense to take a pretty big leap. As a Packer fan, it hurts me. It does. But I think... you ready for this? I think that they can finish a lot better than people are thinking, the Bears. I think they can finish 2nd in the division. I really do. Defense is pretty decent. A good running back. I've been talking about the Bears. If people have been paying attention, I love Khalil Herbert. I love Justin Fields. I love DJ Moore. So, I don't love saying it. But you betcha I'm going to be watching a lot of Bears games this year. So
you had him ranked as 14.
Yeah, so I had him high.
This was our biggest swing between me and you, and Adam kind of balanced.
I think
this is the biggest swing.
He's never had a quarterback as good as Justin Fields. He might have had Cam Newton off the top of my head. I don't know, but if he did, it was noodle arm Cam Newton. So
he finished as wide receiver 20 last year on 888 yards and 7 touchdowns, but he was targeted 118 times. He only caught half of them.
I will book the over on targets of 118 this year.
I would agree.
And I don't even think that's a book it. I think that's just very easily. So if you're getting more targets
and even
and
some
catching
semblance of
more
accuracy.
Yeah, and you're catching
This
more
is
passes.
terrible. Yeah.
He can easily finish in the top 10. I think is the ceiling. I think more than likely he'll finish top 15.
Agreed. That's the best.
With injuries.
That would be an awesome
Yeah,
season.
I agree.
So I love the value of DJ Moore this year. I'm really high on the value of these guys that we have here, like at 15, 16, 17, 18. Like, that's great value in drafts right now, in my opinion.
Talk about Debo at 19.
It's part of me, like, I mean, we get into this in the chat a little bit here too, so we can kind of talk about it. That I like Debo. I think he has like kind of that Tyreek Hill-esque type ability where if you just get him the ball, he can make stuff happen. So and our rankings reflect that he is much worse than Tyreek Hill. There's some injury history, stuff like that for Debo. But I just like the versatility. I like the offense they're running in San Francisco, where they just have someone who can get the ball to them and then let the skill players go. And so we love Christian McCaffrey for that reason. I love Debo for the same reason. And so, again, assuming he stays healthy, this one to me is riskier because of his health. Yep. But I like him, and he definitely has wide receiver 2 upside here.
I think a really good example here, I didn't end up with many Debo shares this year. And I think that's because I ended up with a lot more Ayuk shares.
I like the value.
I don't love the value of Debo here, but I also don't want some of these other guys over him, like a Christian Watson. I'd rather have Debo. And that's, again, as a Packer fan, it hurts me to say, but I think Debo's going to give you a consistent stat line every week, and I think with Watson, people are enamored with the fact that he scored a touchdown for like 7 straight weeks, but that's not sustainable at all, and that's why he's not in our top 20. But I think Debo, there will be games where he disappears, and I think there will be games where he has really, really great numbers, right? I mean, he'll give wide receiver 1 numbers for a few weeks. Yeah. And I think that also, my thought is that I don't really love Purdy as well when it comes to the passing game. So,
this is
a good ranking here. I don't think we're actually going to end up with them very often.
I agree. Yeah. It's pretty interesting too. And the next is Terry McLaurin, and so we'll talk about him and these other guys. Yeah. Jake, you had Scary Terry here. I had Mike Williams. Other guys that should make appearances. We talked about Christian Watson a little bit. Mike Evans, all kind of in this. They were all competing in our rankings for like who falls where. I think Terry McLaurin has the edge here just because I think I'm
let's
in
be
on
honest.
Sam
it's
Howell
our
this
Sam
year.
Howell.
I love Sam Howell this year. I look out.
Yeah.
I'm getting myself some Sam Howell shares this year. Anyway, so I think that's why he's here. I have no issue with anyone putting someone else in this spot.
A really nice thing here is 19 and 20. So the top 18 we feel really good about, right? With DJ Moore in our rankings here being the last one.
But you could tuck
after
him
that,
in
if you want to put in Keenan Allen, Deebo Samuel, Terry McLaurin, Christian Watson, off the top of my head,
Jerry Judy, one that I've seen.
You want Brandon Ayuk in there, like any of those guys going in that range, fine. That's our thought. Like there are 18 for us. There are 18 guys that belong to be in the top 18, and then from there it kind of switches around. So if you want to jumble these last ones, that's fine. I think all of them have their ups and all of them have their downs. I think Mike Williams, Keenan Allen they got the best quarterback to go. I think they just kind of will cancel each other out, and they have injury history. We talked about Watson. What's your thought on Love? So, I don't think we're going to get consistent play out of Watson. Judy, what does Russ do, right? There's just these risks now. I think that they will all give consistent wide receiver 3 numbers. There'll be some weak guys who can give more wide receiver 2 numbers, and I think there are a few guys that can give wide receiver 1 numbers in that group that we mentioned. Debo, Terry, Mike Williams, they all can give really good weeks. I just think they're few and far between. I also don't mind. Yeah, I don't mind Terry McLaurin as your second receiver. Right? I don't mind Mike Williams as your second receiver. I don't mind Brandon Cooks as your second receiver.
Oh.
All right. Jordan, tell the people the top 20.
All right, here we go. We got Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Cooper Kupp, Tyreek Hill, A.J. Brown, top 5. Stephon Diggs, CeeDee Lamb, Devontae Adams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Garrett Wilson finishing out the top 10. Jalen Waddle, Chris Olave, T. Higgins, Devontae Smith, DK Metcalf as 11 through 15. And then Amari Cooper, Calvin Ridley, DJ Moore, Deebo Samuel, Terry McLaurin, 15 through 20. I got to address some things in the chat.
Yeah, go ahead.
Don, you've really been, I can see it in the chat. You're talking a lot about Mike Evans. Unfortunately, I believe I booked this year that this ends Mike Evans' streak of 1,000-yard seasons. I just don't think that it's I don't think he does it. Not with Baker Mayfield. I also think Baker Mayfield does not play the whole year. And so I think Kyle Trask comes in, and that's worse for him. I think Chris Godwin ends up being like kind of the safety blanket there, not the big over the top. So anyway, sorry, Mike Evans not a top 20 for me this year. He finished as wide receiver 16.
Give me Chris
think it's
Godwin.
going to be less.
Give me Chris Godwin over
less.
Mike Williams
Yeah.
or Mike Evans. I think, especially in a PPR situation, give me the guy who's going to catch more balls, and I think that ends up being Godwin.
Yeah.
So there you go, guys. We are not. I think I mentioned this a second ago. We are not going to be doing our tight end rankings on the podcast because we have something else we kind of want to do next week. Sorry, I had to stop what I was saying. Joey in the chat, live on YouTube at youtube.com/nextstepfantasyfootballpodcast said, hot take, Mike Evans gets traded to a contender before the trade deadline. Love that. Love that. Speaking of loving things, next week we're going to do a love-hate episode. So we're going to come to you guys and tell you who are 3 people we love, 3 people we hate. But that might be ADP. That might just be the guys we think are going to do really well this year. People who are just, like I said, being overdrafted, underdrafted. Just guys we love and guys we hate. So, like I said, we're not going to do our tight ends, but we'll make a graphic and we'll still post those on our YouTube or on our social media platforms. So make sure you're following us there. We will post this when the episode goes up on Friday. Jordan, does that sound right to you? You still going to do Friday?
Yeah,
okay,
always.
Cool. But there you have it, guys. Wide receiver rankings. We appreciate everyone hanging around for these rankings. It's fun. We are 2 weeks away from football, so
it's almost here.
It's almost here. We have one more draft episode, and then we can start getting into the fun stuff. Joey said it. Tight end rankings: Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, and then everybody else.
Yes.
So pretty much that. Yeah.
Done. Episode done.
Done. So we appreciate you guys hanging around. Again, we do our episodes live on YouTube, youtube.com/nextstepfantasyfootballpodcast. We have our Facebook at the Next Step Fantasy Football Podcast and our Instagram at next_step_pod. If you are not following us there, do it. We're pushing 400 on Facebook, pushing 2K on Instagram. And, the more we grow, the more we'll be able to connect with more of you guys. And that's kind of the fun part, right? Jordan, unless you have anything else you want to say.
Go Tigers.
Go Tigers. All right, guys. You take care. Be good. Awesome. And we're still live on YouTube. You guys, Joey, thanks for jumping in. Don Jenks, thanks for jumping in. Chad, thanks for jumping in. If I missed anyone, I apologize. But, hey, you guys
Don, I'm sorry. I'm sorry about Mike Williams. I did add it to our bucket list.
Mike Evans.
Oh, why do you keep saying Mike Williams?
Because we were talking about Mike
Evans.
You guys,
I added it to the bucket list.
Awesome. You guys listening, you guys are awesome. If you want to, please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the share button, do all that fun stuff. It just helps. We're slowly growing that. We're almost at 30 subscribers on the YouTube, so we're getting there. We started this one a little later, so it's a little different. But again, thank you guys for being here. Jordan, you say bye to the people.
Bye, everyone.